guys, welcome to Lofty Talks this week. This week we're talking drones, UAVs, UAS, and just not.
Just not.
When
you think you're gonna? Just don't. Just don't.
It's the Nike saying, just don't do it. Yeah. All right, guys, again, Lofty Talks this week. We're talking drones, UAVs, UAS, and not just the flying systems. Mm-hmm. So first we're going to hit headlines, and then we'll get into what you all are here to learn about, us talking about drones. So one of the first headlines we want to talk about this week is a new Parallel 17 officially lets you run Windows 11 on an M1 Mac.
And I officially don't care, as we've talked about. Look, this is important.
Yeah.
There are some pieces of software, some apps you need to run Windows. I get it. There's a business use case for it. Not super huge news for me, but yeah, it's important. Can you run it on an? There it is. Can you run it on? Can you run it on an M1 Apple Silicon?
Yeah, that was the big chutzpah here. I'm just excited to load my Steam library and get back to my Age of Empires 1
through that sweet virtualization.
That's right, baby.
Only taking a 35% hit to performance to do it.
Give me that as soon as possible. Next up, guys, TCL announces that their new TVs will come preloaded with Google TV instead of Roku. So long Roku City. The submarine was always my favorite.
Roku City. I'm not familiar.
No.
With the Roku City. Is that
Roku
like
City's
a preloaded?
a screensaver. So it's what always runs as soon as Netflix is like, bro, you still there? And if you don't touch the remote for 5 seconds, you get the Roku City screensaver. I'm Submarine or that weird alien that climbs up the tower for sure.
So this is an interesting one because I actually, like years ago, maybe even a decade ago at this point, bought a Blu-ray player that was a Google TV. I think it was Logitech made it.
Nice.
There were like two. There was a Logitech one and a something else one. I had one of them. And it was like, it had like the controller with the keyboard on it. Kind of like a web TV.
Yep.
That's what it felt like. And it was actually really cool at the time, being able to use it for your TV guide and kind of seamlessly swap between television. This was like before streaming TV was that popular, so it was made to work with your set-top box. Anyway, it was cool. I have no idea what the current evolution of Google TV is like. You know, that old thing was running Android 1 or 2, but it was really neat, and I think this could be interesting. Roku, we've all used it. If you've ever stayed at a hotel or an Airbnb, this is a market position they don't want to lose. And I think is this a TCL TV in here?
It is.
It's got a Roku on it. That's like my main Roku machine in there. And this is a weird position they don't want to lose this, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, to be the embedded player is a really good solution for, again, hotel rooms, things like that, where you see them.
And I think there's a conversation to be had in one of our subsequent stock investment talks, which is a joke. We're not going to do that.
Yeah. No.
But
the Lofty is not a investment trader, and we are not qualified to give you investment advice. No. We just like the stock.
That's right. Next up, we've got Google bringing Samsung to the Apple Watch fight. So Google's new Wear OS is going to at least debut and probably be exclusive with the Samsung Watch wearables.
Interesting. I'm not an Android person. I'm a Mac person, right?
That's us.
And I'm not wearing my Apple Watch, but I've been an Apple Watch user for a long time. Wearables, very cool. I did not realize the upside that was potential there until I had one, and like just the ability to triage notifications and not have to pull the phone out of my pocket to see what's going on, and like having the fine-tuned control that you get over like what makes it all the way to your wrist versus what stays in your pocket. All really, really neat stuff. I've heard software publishers and like app developers have had trouble building interfaces for these round screens that you tend to see on I think these Samsung devices have round screens. At least the ones referenced in the article here are. And so I think that's a tricky thing, but I don't know the current state of this, how it works. But it is interesting to hear that it's exclusive to the Samsung hardware. And I think we all know Samsung hardware is sort of a cut above the rest of the Android ecosystem, right?
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think they're getting serious, but also I think it shows a maturity of the wearables market.
Yeah.
I don't think you would have seen a decision like this made a few years ago. And so it's not just that Apple has proven that people want these products, but it's also proven that there's leverage here, that the market's going to be continuing to grow. So from a software perspective, it's going to be something for us to all keep our eyes on as that wearable market grows. Things are about to get a lot more serious. Next up, we've got the Valve Steam Deck. So we've got the Valve's response to the Nintendo Switch, except for PC games. What do you think about that, Casey?
I think that not a huge gamer, but a somewhat casual gamer, and I think that Valve has already done some research in this area and apparently has a very good product as far as just being able to stream your basically doing all the processing on your gaming PC, maybe tucked back in an office somewhere, to your living room television and streaming that over a home connection is apparently like super low latency, working with a controller. So they've got a lot of experience in these interfaces and the software around it. And I think that there's just this, we've talked about this before, huge wide open hole in the market for handheld gaming that, like, for whatever reason, these, $1,200 computers made of glass that we all have in our pockets could be attacking and just aren't. I think that I don't know the actual specs. I don't know if my iPhone is as powerful as a Switch, but it's powerful enough to give me the experience that I want as a casual gamer, and it just simply doesn't. Like, I know you have Apple Arcade and stuff like that, but like, you just don't have publishers building that kind of game for it. So of course Valve's going to come in, or somebody's going to come in and like that actually has a content library and say, like, yeah, we're going to enter this space. I think they'll probably do really well in this space.
Yeah, I think it's first a kudos to the Nintendo Switch, right? I think that's the first
Pioneered,
bullet point
right?
on here is saying Nintendo was right.
Yeah.
The hardware's ready for it, and people are ready to consume it that way, because it really is a drop-in dock.
And I don't think, like, even if Apple built the same thing, they could have done it, right? I think it needed Nintendo's name on it to make that happen. I think that was a big component of it. But now why? Right? Now why is there still a gap here?
Yeah, and that's the thing is that Apple's, video games make more than movies every year. This is no longer the boutique industry we knew it was.
Video games actually play more like movies every year.
They do.
I don't know if you played a video game recently, but it's just an interactive cutscene, right?
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
There's all these, hedge funds just sold MGM to Amazon. There's all kinds of money going into this, and gaming's not getting the same attention. And I think that's why we're seeing Apple Arcade. But Apple Arcade feels like a half step in the right direction.
Yeah.
It feels like they haven't married the hardware they already have, which is the iPhone all of us have in our pockets.
We just need the controllers that dock on either side of it, right?
The controller case
that
they can overcharge us for. Next, Google employees who work from home could start losing money as Google revisits their come back to work policy and their payment policies around that.
It's going to be a tricky one. It's a tough one, sensitive one.
Yes.
We're talking about pay. Pay is sensitive, right? The article said something along the lines of, like, this is an interesting new experiment for tech companies that have remote employees. But I disagree with that. It's not that. Companies that have a distributed workforce, and not talking about remote, but just having employees in different locations, have already been doing location-based pay for a long time. The analogy I used when we were talking about this earlier today, money is like a gas, right? You put a fixed amount of money in a balloon, and it doesn't matter what size the room is. When you open the balloon, all of the money comes out.
Yeah.
It fills whatever container. So when you're setting budgets, you have to, as a business, come up with ways to. Well, you have to be able to subdivide budgets and money in such a way, and however you subdivide it, it all gets spent, right? It all gets spent once you do that. So the fact that people are working from home now doesn't mean that, like, cool, we should all get paid the same as the people in San Francisco, right? Because they're working from home too.
Yeah.
It can't work that way, and so it's a sensitive thing, and I can get the issue. I think the issue at hand here is they talked about perhaps how the rollout of it is unfair. They gave examples of employees in, like, a rural county outside of Seattle, taking a 10% pay cut based on where they were living when they used to commute to the office, and in some cases people choosing to continue to commute to the office to not get the pay cut. I think you have to factor in here, we're talking about Google employees here, right? So they're doing okay. And if they're hiring, let me know. But there's definitely there's nuance to that. So if you're making $500,000 a year, 10% pay cut, That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not offsetting the cost of living. If you're making $100,000 a year, though, I might argue if you start to look at what your time's worth, you're talking about a 2-hour commute, and you talk about putting $250, $300 a month into the gas tank, and wearing out your depreciating asset of your vehicle, 3 years faster by doing that commute, there's a trade-off there. But anyway. It's a tricky thing. No one wants to. Would you like a pay cut, Chris?
No, I don't have any interest in that,
nobody's going to volunteer for that. It's a tricky situation. I don't envy them being in it, but
yeah,
what about the new hires going forward?
And I think that's where the tension is, right? When we're talking to new people, and it's like, hey, the base rate for this job is $50,000 plus cost of living raises.
Yeah.
Right? And so everybody just gets more than that. That's an easy conversation to have. But it's when you've been working with Tyler for 10 years and Tyler's output and yours, and he's going to get 6% more than you just because he has a chic apartment.
Yeah.
People are going to there's going to be a rub with that. And as more companies like Lofty go fully remote, and there's a lot more options in the marketplace for people who can leave Google and make a commensurate salary with another company that's now decided to go fully remote.
Yeah.
I think adoption on this is going to be harder than they think.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And, I don't know if you know, but Lofty actually, now that we have remote employees, we do location-based pay. We actually, when we look at a role, we do some adjustments on it based on we have a baseline metric. Because we have to, because we have to be competitive when we take remote employees. Unless you want to, for example, purely rural source, right, and say, okay, every opportunity that we're going to turn up in a job search is going to be in a place that has a lower cost of living than our home office, right? If you do that, you're rural sourcing, right? But if you want to just actually open it up to people anywhere, you're competing with prices in the local market. You have to account for that in your hiring and your acquisition strategy. So it's a tough one. Nobody's going to want to volunteer to be the one that loses money. No. I agree for new hires, you set new expectations on day one. It's a different thing. So maybe that's what ends up with. People get grandfathered in. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. Next in news of billionaires making questionable decisions, Jack Dorsey in a tweet this week says that Bitcoin will unite the world. He just doesn't delineate how. And I'm guessing, based on this tweet, he hasn't been in the comments section for any of the posts on his social media network lately.
Yeah, the headline of this is Bitcoin's going to do X, but we're not sure how.
We're not sure when.
Yeah, when or how is that to me is the headline of all of Bitcoin. Yeah.
My favorite analogy when we're talking about this is it's very common to talk about an athlete who's just been drafted and say they're 2 years away, and Bitcoin's been 2 years away from being 2 years away forever.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, when it gets here, it's going to be here. But we're not there yet. We still haven't gotten there.
So much of blockchain, people got very excited about it. I mean, you have the local university here in Arkansas set up the Blockchain Center of Excellence, and I don't know what they've produced from it yet.
Excellence, my man.
Yeah, mediocrity was taken. But I'm not hating on it. I don't know if they have the same level of enthusiasm for it now as they did when it first came out. People got very excited.
Yep.
But most applications, that I've seen of people speculating ideas of how blockchain can be used were already readily achievable with password protected databases, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that there isn't a use for blockchain. Blockchain's actually really fantastic for building cryptocurrencies. We've proven that. We've proven that, right? And the only other thing that we've proven that Bitcoin does extremely well is reward speculative investors and people with low power costs.
Up next, Starship Technologies delivery robots are coming to more college campuses this fall. These are food delivery robots. Casey, have you ever had your food delivered by a robot?
Not yet, but I am looking forward to the day for sure.
It's as a Grubhub Platinum Plus Premier member. He's part of the
Grubhub Alliance. Actually,
that's right.
He gets to sit in the cockpit of the Grubhub driver's car. He gets to come sit in the driver's seat when
it's like an Uber, but you pay them more, and then you get cold food at the end. I don't know why it hasn't taken off. But we're inching closer to this, and we'll talk more about it later when we get into some of our ideas around vehicles and where we think some of that's going. But Domino's is already ushering in a new future with their cardboard pizza, where they don't just transport it in an autonomous car, they bake it in an oven in the car.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see, maybe not that extreme, but I think we're going to see a lot more of this and this is Starship specifically focused to college campuses.
Yep.
But there's a lot, and that's because of density, right? There's going to be a lot of opportunities around this in urban centers where there's enough density that it can make the capital investment worth it.
They've got density and they've got the walkability aspect of it, right?
Yep.
And so, but they do. This article does say they've done, I think, something like 1 million deliveries.
Yeah.
They are on par with some autonomous vehicle companies as far as just number of miles put down with these things.
Yeah.
And they're doing, I think it said 50,000 street crossings a day.
Yeah.
So they are working on street crossings and things like that. I don't think it's ready to drop this thing in the middle of Times Square and hope it doesn't get hit by a bike messenger, but might be fun for the challenge. They put a little ramp on the side.
Sweet tricks.
But it's interesting. Like the small delivery robots are a very cool concept for autonomous things of this nature. And I was surprised at how many miles they've put down. That's really interesting.
We pulled it for the joke, obviously, but them being able to work out those decision-based interactions for autonomous vehicles without a human life at risk, with it's just your bowl of soup or your flat of pad thai. That's really interesting, right? And we can joke about it, but it's a really unique experience. But also, they're not gonna have to do this at a loss for long. Food delivery is a place where you can make money.
Think so? More than, is it on the Grubhub model of charging me $19 to deliver my food?
The scary thing about this, and where we hope it doesn't go, is just a bunch of shadow kitchens popping up, right? Where they're just using virtual space, everyone's making minimum wage, and then that's how the business model works. And we don't want to see that, obviously. But there is some margin in some of these operations, because that's the thing, right? Is we can see the Uber and Lyft model now as they're talking about unionization in California and what that means and pushback, and it's happening a lot in the EU too, where their business model wasn't really sustainable, and they were doing it because they weren't paying a living wage.
Are you telling me that Uber wasn't all about the people?
I've got a sneaking suspicion it wasn't.
Well.
Up next, we've got CyberDog, the new ominous-looking robot from Xiaomi. I am so sorry, everyone. I don't know exactly how to say that. But I can tell you that the intellectual property lawyer from Boston Dynamics does.
Yeah, their lawyers are far too busy defending other intellectual property issues than coming after you for a mispronunciation of their name. It's really, it looks just like, if you've seen the Boston Dynamics, I forget what the Boston, the Mad
I think
Dog.
It's Spot, maybe?
Spot? What an innocuous name for such a terrifying thing.
Maybe not.
Spot, no, you're right. It is. It's the little dog-looking robot with the backwards knees and stuff. What's crazy about this thing is the 1,500. I stumbled over it because I can't be right. $1,500 price point on this thing, which is cheaper than our little Robotimi over here. And so if it does as well as Robotimi does at its things, there's really interesting. Teamy is a good example of something that's not like the most cutting edge robot hardware, but when you get a price point to a certain point where it opens up all these possibilities for the not. I don't see this hitting the consumer market. I don't see like everyone owning one of these and letting it run around the backyard, or like strapping a Dyson vacuum to it and replacing their Roomba. But I do see more small business type applications or fleet style applications when you see something going from $70,000 to $1,500. And these guys might be sued into oblivion over it, but there's going to be some pressure for that price point to start coming down.
And that's what this does, right? That gives us an opportunity to surface use cases that you don't have when it's $100,000. So for this much, you can put in an application where you think it might dislodge one of its legs in 6 months just to see if it works. And then once you've got the platform there, you start getting some more trajectory, telemetry experience. You're able to see if this product can fit your use case and then start layering some software on top of that, which is where I think this is going, which is the fun part about this. So that's a great point for us to talk about, Casey, our interactions with drones and UAVs and UAS systems. What's your experience with drones and autonomous vehicles?
Personally? So I fly a drone. Actually, not a drone. I was informed.
We gotta be clear.
Drones have missiles on them. A UAV,
you don't have one with missiles?
No, mine did not come with missiles. I did not buy the missile expansion package with mine.
Pro upgrade.
Yeah, I spent all my money on the Best Buy replacement policy, which does not cover missiles, it turns out. I have a DJI Mavic Air, so this is like a 2017 model, which still holds up really, really well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like every other piece of tech, there's incremental yearly improvements, but flies really well. I have that for personal reasons. If the FAA is listening, I am flying it for personal purposes.
Below the certain.
I am actually in the process. I'm doing a study guide right now for my commercial drone pilot license,
That's awesome.
so that we can use it for work.
Yeah.
Use it maybe in some of our marketing content. You know, so you hit a drone shot flying around our office here.
Really level it
our 1,000 square foot studio will have drone just like
crash
flying
in
all
10
over.
seconds.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm looking into doing that professionally. But it's fun. It was a hobby thing.
Yeah.
The tech was interesting, and I do a lot of amateur photography, videography type stuff, and so that's been really neat. Totally blown away with some of the use cases I've actually had for it practically. I actually, after a weather event, flew my Mavic Air over my house and identified shingles that had got ripped off and the zipper effect when it was an old roof, and so
that's awesome.
Found damage with it. I suspected there was. It was an old house, so it's like you see a leak and you're like, is that new or is it old? Yeah. Flew it up there, found the spot, and I was like, this is really neat.
That's awesome.
Also, I was like, damn, I didn't clean my gutters.
Can it do that yet?
It can't do that exactly. I used it at our new property, kind of aerial survey and get an understanding of where certain things were.
Yeah.
We have about 6.5 acres, and so that was really cool. I thought that was an upside. Also tested the durability of some of the trees in my yard.
That's handy.
Yeah,
that's a neat feature.
I flew it into I think a red oak tree at about 40 miles an hour, and the tree was fine. Held up just great.
Check.
Yep.
Tree's fine, guys. So I've had a couple lower end drones. I kind of start off with just fun ones for the kids to play with, and then realized I was having just as much fun, if not more than they.
Dad's turn.
Yes. So
give me the drone.
I commandeered a couple turns there for safety's sake, and realized, oh yeah, that's why everyone likes this. And I got one of the kind of the lower end Alibaba ones, where I could still replace parts and pieces because you're gonna explode the rotors. And have done some swaps, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah. I really, really enjoy it, and I can easily see how you'd get that kind of toe in the water and then level up your experience.
Yeah.
So that's very, very understandable. And while that's really neat, one of the reasons we wanted to sit down and talk today is because we've seen professionally how much UAV and UAS systems have started to take over the work we've been doing with our clients.
Yeah. I mean, we did not start and we are not exclusively a UAV software developer, but we are now seeing it more and more often. We're developing expertise there, and in some cases, we're building software that's actually interfacing with the vehicles themselves. In some cases, we're building a software product that is simply consuming imagery or data that is produced using a UAV as part of some other large-scale data problem. But in either case, it's been really interesting to see this popping up, and we're seeing it a lot in civil engineering. We're seeing it a lot in agriculture.
Yep.
But basically, any application where visual inspection by a human would be difficult, or time-consuming, or just getting like that aerial shot, right? Things that you could have done before, you just used to have to commission an airplane to come fly it. It was super expensive, and so that's showing up everywhere, and it's changing everything. I mean, the amount of stuff that we can do is just wild, and it's not just like photo imagery. There's different hardware you can mount on these devices. Infrared, LiDAR, you name it, right? All kinds of other sensors that we're able to put on different payloads that we can put on these things, and it's really wild to see some of the very practical applications for this. Even today, this is not like super future stuff. This is like very practical today type application.
And some of the first places where UAVs and UAS systems kind of replaced human interactions were places where it was dangerous.
Yeah,
where it might be unsafe always to have somebody do this, and so those were really, really easy low-hanging fruit, and we're able now to see iteration on top of that. But then we're also able to see through different software processing we can implement, or different hardware pieces we can involve in the project, how much farther we can go even than that. And it's really, really neat to see the market develop and the software we're able to put on top of those outputs, but not even just that, but also things we haven't even thought of till it starts happening with someone in the field. And so there's things when you're getting that data collection where until you've got somebody there, at the joystick with the software, with the iPad, you don't even realize you're going to be able to do that with these software outputs. And it's been really neat to see those kind of start coming to life as we start pushing at the edge of what we can do with software.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you excited about for the future of drones? And you could talk today, but I want you really to think about 5, 10, 20 years from now. What are you excited about for UAV and UAS systems?
Well, I think that we're just scratching the surface, right? And the technology has moved so fast, okay? And so maybe one of the best ways to answer the question of what do we expect 15, 20 years from now is to look back at what we had 20 years ago, right? And say, can we expect the same order of magnitude of difference? Because we were talking about this earlier on the cinematography side, stuff like that. I could go on Amazon and I can buy a couple of lights, and I can buy a camera, and I can buy a really nice DJI drone, and I can go produce a video or a film or whatever. I can do a video shoot for under $2,000 that 20 years ago I could not do with $1 million budget.
Yep.
Isn't that crazy?
It really is.
You really couldn't. Most of that being in having to hire a helicopter and operators and pilots and fuel and human-sized gimbal rigs to stabilize these big cameras. But that's where we are today. That's how far we've come in 20 years. What does that same order of magnitude of jump look like? I can't even tell you right now. Someone's better at future casting than this, But if I did it would be like in Space Odyssey where they imagined the iPad, but you had to look up the newspaper numbers on the back and crank a dial to get to it. They had touch screens figured out. So I don't. My projection would be off. But if it's something that significant, I don't think we've even seen it yet.
No.
Battery technology is getting better. That's a big limiting factor. Big payloads are flying for 30 minutes, and you got to recharge them. But we've got drone ships catching rockets falling from space. That's a real thing happening right now. So,
in the world.
Yeah, can we send a UAV, a quadcopter style drone across the Atlantic? Probably, if we can have some boats out there autonomously navigating, solar powered to land and recharge them. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm excited to see as we move from these point-to-point applications, kind of get something from here to there, right, to hive-style operations and missions, or can I deploy a box that services an area? Delivery is one thing, but there's just human carrying. And when it comes to autonomous vehicles, we haven't even talked about self-driving cars. Really. Thoughts on self-driving cars?
Self-driving cars, I think, are really exciting. One of the largest changes we had ever in America was after World War II, whenever the highway system exploded and people had access to cars. And I think we're going to see a similar response once autonomous electric vehicles are ubiquitous in this country.
And that's such a given that it's ubiquitous. I was talking to my wife, Paige, about this. She's like, maybe my car will last long enough and our son will be able to drive it. And it's like, he ain't going to be driving a car.
No.
She doesn't believe me, but here's the deal. She might be right that we're not there yet, but if we're not there, we're there now. Really, it's already 10 times more safe to be riding in a Tesla on autopilot than it is to be driving a car yourself. It's the non-self-driving cars that are the problem. We're practically there. If 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're not actually there yet, it is not for technological reasons. It's for economic, sociological, political reasons, period, full stop. That's it. And that's a definite. So we're already there. You put another 20 years behind that and all the things that are happening when we're not a drive myself to work centric society. Really, really interesting stuff. Like the Domino's pizza things being done on the way. Things being manufactured in flight, if you will.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see, and it's a whole nother topic of conversation for another week, so make sure you like and subscribe so you can get that sweet, sweet content.
Piping hot tent.
Oh, I'm telling you. But think about the difference in being willing to commute if you can turn around and sleep, or if you can get in your transportation pod and start working then.
You're thinking too small, Chris. Work flies to you.
They bring the
whole damn building just
drives.
Just
drives to everybody's house. Gets you. It's one Uber pool, except it's the office.
But So like that self-driving is going to change a ton of stuff. Probably we've all speculated on that some. But then like what happens with the rest of UAVs?
Yeah.
Personal flight type things. We're still talking transportation. There's so much to do with just imagery and
I think you really hit the nail on the head though, right? We're going to cross this threshold with technology where the possibilities are almost limitless.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, what can we handle?
Yeah.
What can we as a society or emotionally, as a herd of people, what can we handle accepting?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the limiting factor, because I don't think it's going to be the technology for much longer.
And like being the, I'll close this out with the unapologetic capitalist. I'm excited. There's a lot of opportunity for Lofty here, because all of this technology that is kind of mass market applications, or like the broadest market applications possible, really exciting. But it gets even more exciting, like real. We talk to our clients sometimes about data is sort of a continuum of value, right?
Yep.
And raw data is valuable just sitting on the shelf. But the more you enrich that data with analytics and like domain knowledge, the more valuable it becomes. And so there's a lot of great raw data coming off these things. But then it's when organizations take what we can do with these things and then put custom software on top of it, custom processing on top of it, that encapsulates some specific domain area, some area of expertise, that like it gets really, really valuable. And so that's the thing that we get excited about. Oh, what am I most excited about Drones X20? All the money we're going to make doing it. That's not what I'm trying to say. But there is a lot of value in it. I mean, it's really, really interesting, and it's going to be fun to work on it with our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if that's you, let us know. Drop us a line. We'll have a link down below in the comments where you guys can get a hold of us and talk about your exciting drone project and how we can make that a reality for you and your business. And we can talk through all the other companies you've already helped be successful. So guys, if you like this, please make sure you like and subscribe. We're eager to see you back next week. And if you want to talk drones, let's jump in the comments. We'll be in there talking back and forth with you guys. UAVs and UASs too, not just the ones with missiles.
Doesn't just have to have missiles.
Not just the ones with missiles.
Yep.
We'll probably direct you somewhere else for that. But thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot.